All right, there is a lot of power in the words we speak. Sometimes those words are negative, other times they're positive. And some people believe in that kind of thing and some people don't. They don't think our words actually mean a whole lot, but they do. I've seen it time and time again in my life. I've seen it for the negative, and I've also seen it for the positive, and it's no different in your life. All right, now I want to tell you something that somebody said about me one time and how it actually happened and why this matters to you, all right? Because it's interesting, this particular thing that was said was actually a good thing, but it took place right after a bad thing. It was 10 years ago this month that I was horribly injured by a suicide bomber in Kandahar, Afghanistan. And for all of you who know my story from blownupguy.com and everything else I've done with speaking and writing, you know that story, so I'm not going to go into that. But what's interesting is what happened when I got home. About a month after getting home, I was a few weeks out of the hospital, and I went back to a church in Leesville, Louisiana, where I had attended prior to deploying. My wife and I went there, and there was this lady who was up on stage singing, and after the service, she came up to me in the back of the church, right near the door. I was about to leave, and keep in mind at this time, I was wrapped up in burn bandages. My face was beet red from the second-degree burns that was on my face, and this little Hawaiian lady who lived in Louisiana, she walked up to me, she grabbed my hands, which were in compression garments at the time from the burns. She walked up, she looked me in the eye, and she said these words. She said, "Brian," she said, "God wants me to tell you something." In fact, what she actually said was, "I have a word for you," which that always kind of freaks me out because people have been wrong so many times, and it sounds kind of ultra spiritual, but I get it. And she said, "God wants me to tell you that those hands he is healing will become healing hands." And I thought, okay, well, thank you, I appreciate that. Looking back on it, my hands were the worst burned part of my body. They were full thickness, 3rd-degree burns, both hands. I couldn't make a fist. I couldn't bend my fingers or anything. And so sometimes we look, it's interesting how somebody will say something like that, and it's not about something that's a little bit wrong with us. It's about like the worst thing that's wrong in our life. And it's the most impossible thing sometimes that we think we'll never bounce back from. Now fast forward a few years. Now I've written some books. I wrote Redeployed, which is for the military and readjusting after you get home from war. I wrote Never the Same. I've written some others. And it's interesting because I have full function of my hands now, and it's my hands that God has used in my life to produce things and to write things that help other people experience healing in their lives, to help other people redeem their own stories, just as mine has been redeemed. And one particular story comes to mind. I was doing some training, some resilience training for a veterans organization in Colorado, and one of the guys who was attending this program, he walked up to me and introduced himself, and he said, "I know you." He said, "I know we've met somewhere before." And I told him, I said, "Well, I'm pretty good with faces. I'm bad with names, but I'm good with faces." I said, "I don't think we've met before." He says, "No, we've met. I know your face. Where have we met before?" And we started talking. He said, "You know what it was?" He said, "I got your book. You wrote a book, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I've written some." I said, Redeployed was the more recent one. He said, "That's the one." I said, "That's interesting." I said, "Tell me the story of that." So this guy he had deployed out of Fort Stewart, Georgia, and deployed to Iraq. And one particular day while he was there in Iraq, they had come under fire. They had gotten into some terrible firefights with the enemy. And he ended up losing a friend in an ambush that day. One of his friends was killed in action that day. And he said when he got back to the base, he was just so mad and messed up mentally, and he didn't even know how to put things together. And so he went to the chaplain, and he tried to talk to the chaplain there on the base, and the chaplain more or less said, "Look, I wish there was something I could say to you, but there is absolutely nothing I can. I don't know what to say. There's nothing I can say. I wish that weren't the truth. I'm sorry. But I want you to have this." And he reaches over and he grabs a book. Hello. And he hands this guy my book, Redeployed. It's about how combat veterans can fight the battle within and win the war at home. And he said after he left, he read the book from cover to cover in like 2 hours. Interesting thing, I have never set foot on Fort Stewart, Georgia. I've never spoken to any unit out of Fort Stewart, Georgia. But in this man's time of need, in this horrible time, he just lost a friend hours earlier in an ambush in a war zone, the chaplain gives him this book. And then I meet him like a year later in Colorado, and he's telling me how that book helped him through that difficult time, because it answered a lot of the questions he was asking that in that clouded moment when he couldn't think straight. So I look back on that little Hawaiian lady in Leesville, Louisiana, who had a word from God for me. I thought, you know, most of the time people say that there's an agenda behind it, and they're wanting to feel like they're important, or sometimes they even believe that they're what they're saying. But sometimes I believe it actually is God speaking to people through us and through other people into our lives, because she said that those hands that God is healing, they're healed now. They're skin grafted, but they're healed, and I can use them. Those hands that he would heal would become healing hands, and they did, through writing and through speaking. And I can't tell you how much that's done for me. It allowed me to rediscover my voice and redeem this experience and redeem my story, which is why I talk to so many other people and I try and help them use their story. It seems like almost everywhere I speak, people come up to me afterwards and they say, Brian, I haven't been to war, but I was abused, I was raped, I was molested, you know, I lost a loved one, I have a special needs kid, or something they're struggling with in life. And they say, I want to use my story to help people too, just like you do. And so for the longest time, I just had to tell them, well, good luck with that, because I had nothing. But that's why I created useyourstory.com, which I'll put a link in the bio. Useyourstory.com is where I teach other people how to use their story, teach other survivors or people with a unique experience who have a message, how to use their story to get out there. Because you never know, the thing that was injured in your life might just be that healing element that makes the complete difference in someone else's life. Someday, some guy in a war zone, some lady in some war zone somewhere, might just find a resource, a recording of your talk, a short video, maybe a book or a resource that you produced, and it'll help them not make a fateful and final decision that would be destructive through generations. It can help them make the right decision. So I want to encourage you today, you know, if you're interested in that, I'm not trying to sell you anything. You know, we do have a program you can invest in there. It'll teach you how to make a difference in an income, sharing your story so you can pay your bills and survive, but you can also make a difference in people's lives with your story. And we also have a free resource on there as well to help you get started fast. And so you can go to useyourstory.com. Yeah, I kind of look like that Wilson guy off of Home Improvement, don't I? Remember, he's always over the fence? All right, no idea where that came from. Said that the other day, I think. I don't know. But anyway, hope this helps you out. Just remember, the words you speak are extremely powerful, so be careful what you say, what you speak over yourself and other people. Keep it positive, keep it good, keep it constructive, because your story matters.